This is lesson 7 of the Python beginner course, and today we're talking about modules and packages. So let's get right to it. Okay, so in the last lesson we have created the class car, and we have also created the inheriting class Mercedes, inheriting class from car. So we now want to know what is packages and modules. So if we are going to take this entire class and copy it into a new file called car.py and then paste it right here, and let me remove the abstract method because we're not actually going to use it, but we are going to say static method just for the completeness. And that makes car.py a module. That means that if we are going to use the class car, we are going to need to import the module car.py that has that class. And let's see how that works. So in example.py, we are now no longer have the car class, and I'm going to also remove the abstract method here. So now something is invalid in the Mercedes class because car is non-existent. So let's see. Now I want to include the car class, so I'm going to import it. So what I'm going to do is from car import car. So now I have imported car from car, but still something is not really working. So now after restarting Visual Studio Code, I can see that the import is working correctly. Sometimes you will see that the import shows up as doesn't resolve, but it does resolve, and you can see that by hovering over car and seeing class, okay, or over your class that you are importing and seeing the type of it instead of the word any. And any means that Python doesn't know what to resolve the object to. So if that happens to you, remember that you should be correct in the placement of the files. The file that you are importing from should be in the same folder as the imported file, imported module, or you can have a hierarchy, and then you can actually refer to them from the root hierarchy, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So we now have a car, we have imported car, and we can see that the code seems to not show up any problems, but now let's run it and see that it works just like the last lecture. So we're going to run and debug, and we can see that we already have the same results that we were expecting: false, true, false, brand, which means that it is using the code in car to actually create these objects. Okay, now let's try and separate the files, which means that I'm going to have a root directory, which means I'm going to add a folder named app, and then I'm going to add another folder here called service, and I am going to move car into service and example into app. Okay, so now this is no longer relevant. This is any, which means that Python doesn't resolve it correctly. So let's fix that. Instead of doing from car, we now have a hierarchy of folders that we need to resolve. So app, and then service, and then car. So app.service.car. That's it. Now I should see class again, which is great. And let's try to run it again. And now I am getting the error no module named app. The reason behind that is that there is one file that is missing. So, first of all, you know what? Before showing you the missing file, I want to show you what it means to run this file. So if we're going to look at what we're doing here, this is what Python is doing to run our code. And this is just running the Python code, the example.py. But now we want to run in modules. So we're going to do it by ourselves now. Clear. So let's do it. We're going to write Python -m for module, and then app.example. And now we can see that we got the results that we wanted because we referred to the file as a module. So let's see how you can fix that in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to create, and we're going to do module instead of doing a Python file. Module name app.example. So let's see if that works for us. Python module, play, and we can see that we fixed it. False true, false brand. Great. So this is how you create modules. This is how you configure Visual Studio Code to run with them. You need to start getting comfortable with using the terminal more. I'm writing clear to write this to clear the screen. And if you have any questions about how to do stuff in the terminal, let me know. I can help you with that too, and probably create another video, separate video about that. So let's move on from talking about modules to talking about packages. So modules was a part of the entire code of a Python project. Now let's talk about packages. Packages means a collection of modules, which means that I can now take a package which is filled with a lot of Python files or modules, and then I can put it somewhere in the cloud on a server somewhere, and then I can serve it to any Python project that wants it. This is called a repository, and technically we are already using a repository in this very project. The entire Python language is filled with a lot of packages that work behind the scenes that we don't really see. But if we want to give a tangible example of some kind of package that we can use, then let's see how to do that. So for that, we're going to use a software called Poetry. So Poetry is actually a software that allows us to manage our packages, which means that I can now import packages into my project and lock their version, and then I can be sure that across all distributions of this very software, the versions of different packages that I use remain the same. It's very important because if we don't lock the versions, then sometimes people can get a higher version that may break something or introduce new bugs into the system. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a linter using Poetry. So I'm going to write Poetry add, and then black. Black is the name of a package that introduces linting into our project. So now it's installing, Black and all of the dependencies that Black has. So we can see that we now have a few packages installed in the project, and we now have a new file here called poetry.lock. So let's see what Black is doing for us. So if I'm going to do Black dot, so now I have these reformatted files. These are the files with my code. So they were now reformatted to adhere to the Python standard. And this is not part of the lecture. I'm not going to dive into Black as a package and what it does, but I just wanted to show you the new poetry.lock file and also the PyProject file. So now we have Python, which is the language that we use, and Black, which is another package that we use, and it is locked to the version 22.8.0 and any minor versions after that, like 22.8.1. So Poetry, I'll leave a link to the documentation of Poetry so you can check it out. It is amazing. It helps you a lot. And also I've shown you how to run your own packages, your own code in Python, which is very, very simple, doing python.m app.example. And then we can see that we already have all of these results that we were expecting within our code. So now, after we know how to write some basic Python, we know how to use loops, and we know how to use a few specific data structures, and we also know how to separate our code into modules, which is very important. Now let's do some basic Python exercises. So this is the next lecture. Lecture number 8 is just a collection of exercises that I'm going to solve with you. So check this video out over here, and let's do some Python exercises together.